Welcome to Study Buddy, meditation philosophy for the heart of your practice. This is a live online discussion of ancient yogic texts amongst meditation practitioners in the Shambhavananda Yoga tradition. My name is Acharya Satyam, a resident teacher at Konalani Yoga Ashram in Hawaii, and I welcome you with love and respect. In the coming season, one of our new goals is to work with the sutras a little bit on our own between classes and to allow that self-study time to inform our discussion. Our discussions are amazing, and they're really they're sort of the heartbeat of this class. But there's only really so much insight all of us can have when it's the first time we're seeing a sutra, and we're just encountering it. And it's like that level of insight is important. It's a stepping stone, but there's so much more available the minute we take that sutra sort of into our life a little bit and let it awaken our practice. And so just a couple of concepts, sorry, I'm gonna have to cover you up for a second, about this. One is that there's a yoga sutra actually about this concept. It's called Swadhyaya, and it means self-study. And self-study or self-inquiry is said to bring about understanding of your true nature. And so it's so fascinating that 2,000 years ago, Patanjali went out of his way to make this one of the niyamas, meaning one of the sort of fundamental aspects of how a yogi conducts themselves, because later science would go on to say that self-study is where most of the learning occurs in any discipline, and a part of that is also reflected in just that age-old saying, the best fertilizer is a farmer's footsteps, meaning if you're just carrying that thing with you, you're just in the garden, things are gonna be fruitful. You don't have to unpack every word of Sanskrit. You don't even have to look at it that often, but if it's just with you. And so this little concept, the sort of the pocket sutra thing that we're doing, which, yeah, I know I called it something different last week, but I made a logo and it's right there. It's called the Pocket Sutra. Yeah, I know the palm was pretty cool too. But I was just like, oh, it's all about it being in your pocket. And I thought it was catchy, and then this drawing came together and looks pretty good. So Pocket Sutra, and the idea, you keep in your pocket, and there's a whole like movement right now, you've probably heard about it, about just being like offline and creative and being able to work with like pen and paper again. There's like all these like these journals and everything that's like their research has shown how beneficial it can be. So this is sort of our version. And so my goal is to introduce new sutras to you, to have the initial discussion together, then to revisit it in the next class, utilizing whatever insight you came to, and we'll see, it's loose. Tonight, we'll see how it goes. It's like the first time we're sort of revisiting this. But I think as it goes on, this could, in my opinion, be the key to achieving, Babaji's vision of us making the study of philosophy an aid to our practice. So with that said, any questions or comments, by the way, before we sort of jump into just sort of revisiting where we left off last time? And it's totally cool if you weren't here last time. We're just gonna talk a little bit, and there's new material, and you're here for that. All right, so the last Pocket Sutra breakdown, there's two fundamental sort of quotes. This was the actual sutra. Veda tirakskare sargantara karmatvam. Yogi drives away differentiated perception, and thereby enters into a new world of consciousness that is actually focused on our true nature. So as we're able to drive away difference, our true nature comes to us, comes into view. And this concept of driving away was the first sort of part one of what we were carrying around with us for the week. Did you find that how did you interpret this concept of driving away? In the sutra, Lakshmanju said, oh, it's sort of like ignoring something at a mental level. And I was like, ignoring, is that a word you would use? Or do you interpret it differently? Or maybe I was interested in ignoring, actually. I was like, oh, there is an element of ignoring in surrender. In any case, if anybody wants to chime in, we can start there. Um, we don't have to spend too long. I see Bob got his hand up. Yeah, Bob, how do you interpret driving away?
All right. I
Difference.
wrote, well, I don't look at it as driving away assumes that there is somebody there to drive away something else. And I feel like in the witness state, it's more a matter of, if you're in the witness state, the things that you would, I guess, call driving away, the things you would want to drive away, if you're truly in the witness state, you see those things from a very detached place, as if you're looking down on them, and they have no effect on you. So putting yourself into a state of being detached enough and being a witness of your emotions and the things that your mind is doing. That is how I experience it, rather than trying to take a sword and slash and burn things away. Oh, I don't hear you.
Thanks. Sorry about that. I encountered a really similar experience where I was like, this driving away does make me feel like I'm rejecting and pushing. And I think you really hit the nail on the head with the witness. And it's almost like it it does the work for you. Our work is to stay connected there and allow the witness to, almost like how Rudy says, what you don't need just sort of falls through. You don't have to like push it away. It just falls through. So yeah, I had a very similar experience. I found that driving was quite the word I would use, but nonetheless, and I think this sometimes when we see how other teachers, because Swami Lakshmanju, amazing teacher, Babaji, met him, Paul Reps, he was a mentor of Paul Reps. He's definitely in our, oh, wow, Bob, I did not know you met Lakshmanju. Wow. I hear he's really tall.
He was in bed when I met him, but he
Ah,
sat up when Baba mentioned Paul Reps. He sat up and his eyes got really big. But
wow.
he was an amazing man, and in truth, I felt like there was electricity in the room, and
Hmm.
it felt like he was a very amazing man. I was very grateful to meet him.
Yeah. And so we sometimes hearing how another teacher or perhaps another lineage, so to speak, would describe these concepts actually helps you start to understand how you understand the concept that Rudy did call it surrender, that was a unique term, that we don't encounter that term a lot in the sutras, that was something he like brought to us. I tell you, like I've come to appreciate the teachings from our lineage, even more just by seeing how hard it is and how many generations of yogis have tried to describe this concept, that Rudy, for example, encapsulated as surrender, where you consciously release something, but it's not quite like pushing it away and it's not quite like giving up, etc. So thanks, Bob, for kicking off that conversation about the driving away. Any other comments on that? Sure, prophecy. Thanks.
I was thinking it's kind of like redirecting.
Okay.
So you're not pushing away, driving away all of the stuff that you don't want to identify with. You're just identifying with. So you're redirecting to identify with you know, the inner self, I guess, or
Mhm.
your heart, or whatever. It's just another way of saying it. But I'm betting that there's another sutra that says just that. Like it feels like a lot of the sutras are telling us to do the same thing, and they just say it in a slightly different way every time. But anyway, so that was just those are all my thoughts. There you go.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, that does come up. I remember when Babaji heard that we were offering a level 3 meditation teacher training, he was like, 1,000 ways to surrender. He was just like, oh, like another training teaching this thing. But it seems to be the way it is. It's like our true nature is right, seems to be right in front of us. It's not really about us finding it. It just, oh, here, can we look at it, in this way and that way, and it just keeps clicking in little ways. So yeah, redirecting, just sort of working with that for a moment. Oh, thanks. Yeah, redirecting. What I love about that, and we'll go to Usha right after this, is that it sort of keeps the energy flowing. I don't get caught in accepting and rejecting. It's sort of like, it's almost like how Babaji often says in Kung Fu, like someone might throw a punch and you redirect the energy instead of trying to stop it. It's almost like there's energy flowing, and it's really skillful to be able to redirect it. It requires a lot of presence. And so that, anyway, that's where it sort of landed for me about like how that felt internally. So it's a really helpful word for me. Usha, would you like to comment on that, or a new direction?
I did my pocket book. I was
Pocketbook.
just looking at
That's a good one.
I was looking at my notes, and at the time, and I was achieving it by focusing on what is constant, being awareness, just focusing on our awareness, the thing that is always constant, always with us, and that's our awareness. And then I also remembered, and it was helpful at the time, of a statement that the only thing that transmigrates is our mind. So that was another thing that was helpful, is that I am not the mind. The mind is what anyway. So that was another one. And those are the things that I had my little notes.
Mm-hmm.
But that thought of awareness being what is constant.
Mm-hmm. So the feeling of difference is the feeling of it's almost like it's hard to know where the self is and what difference is and all of that is, but are you saying you can sort of feel that there's a part of you that's more constant, part of you that's steadier than these external experiences? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so my experiences is I was doing something that I always do, walking my dog on a day, and one day I feel one way, the one day I feel another way because of my emotions, my mind, or whatever is going on. But there's always that me that's always there.
Hmm.
And so just that, that was helpful for me to come back to, like, saying that there's me, or this awareness or whatever, that's always there, and these other things are not, they're not constant.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a way for me to pull myself back.
feels good. Yeah, I'm just sort of feeling inside for like how to feeling for that constant place. And I definitely
It's just
feel
like
like that's a, go ahead.
yeah. It's a thing that I guess I got it from the part of during waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. There's always the one
Mm,
thing that threads through, and I think where this is where that all came from inside of me. That's where this feeling came from inside of me. There's that part of you that's always there.
yes. So part of driving away difference is really, like Bob said, not so much about pushing anything away, but rather like re-identifying with the most constant part of us, which might be called the witness, the most, the steadier part you said, the part that you can identify with day after day, and the heart, the breath, these parts of us that are just always there. Thanks, Usha. Yogita.
I I I like describe. I did a free write on it. I like describing surrender as driving away differentiated perceptions. It's like my breath is pushing my very thoughts and perceptions out, so I can experience the bliss and joy beyond these perceptions. And I also had a visualization of me driving up to a Shoshone and leaving all the tensions behind in the creek. And then when I go back, I had a total different perception.
Nice. Thanks, Yogita. Just feeling with that, sort of that actual practice that you just described, that idea of the breath doing the work for us, of driving away this difference. Yeah, Babaji's recently been teaching a lot about how we can better utilize our exhale. On the exhale, really letting that expansion occur, keeping our attention in the heart, but really feeling. And that's sort of where I would naturally feel that driving way of difference with the breath, is letting the breath just sort of like expand us well beyond any tension or limitation. Thank you. Okay. Any last comments or questions on the last portion before we move into some new material? Awesome. Right. All right. So our focal point for this week, we will still end with the 20 minutes of meditation, but our meditation is going to be sort of driven by the new material for the week. So I want to introduce over here. I want to introduce that, work with it a little bit together, see if any comments or questions come up, and then move into practice that's based on it. So it's the second half of the same sutra, but we're given a very unique focal point, and it's really powerful and really helpful and really effective. I'm going to spotlight myself just for a moment, and I will do my best to remember to unspotlight when we're discussing, but just so you can see in case the text is small on your screen. And the first portion is this, centered around something that's called triple awareness. We'll read it together in a moment, but by default, we know that in the yogic tradition, our awareness is described as dualistic, right? We've all heard that term occasionally, or maybe a lot. Dualistic means two, sort of. It means, and it's not saying that like, oh, that means you see two things. It means you're you're caught between two things constantly. When you're in the state of dualism, it's like you always have a situation, but you wish it was different in this certain way to be happy, or you're here and you sort of wish you were there. We're either pushing or pulling in any situation that we're in. And so we find ourselves caught in this constant state, caught between these two realities, never really being able to drink in the contentment that's right under our nose, right in our heart. And so triple awareness doesn't mean, well, on the surface, it means, triple meaning three, doesn't mean, oh, there's more things to focus on. But this idea of triple awareness actually attempts to unify the two things to get us out of this state of accepting and rejecting, jumping like a grasshopper, through our life, and tries to help bridge those two experiences. And so this third center, as it's called, that was we'll read in a moment, isn't really its own thing, but it exists to unite the feeling of separation that causes us to suffer. And so that becomes like the focal point for our work to drive away differentiation and to enter into a new world of God consciousness, as it's called. So let's look at the text. Pujari, it's great to have you here. Would you mind reading this for us?
With pleasure.
Thanks.
When you fix your awareness not only in 2, but in 3, you are carried to God consciousness and you become one with Svachanda Tantra. What is the meaning of triple awareness? The verse tells us there must be triple awareness, not just awareness of 2. Awareness of 2 is the awareness of 2 actions, such as inhaling and exhaling. Triple awareness includes the junction, the gap between any 2 actions, between inhaling and exhaling, and between exhaling and inhaling. It is the junction between one step and another step, between one thought and another thought, between one sensation and another sensation, etc. When you are aware of the 3 centers, then you are carried to Svachanda, to God consciousness.
Well read, Pujari. Thanks. And take your time with that, everybody. Sort of rescanning. Such a practical moment in the sutras. We're given a really specific practice that really aligns so well with our work. So it's a little exciting. Don't get these gems every time. All right. So you heard the intro. You're seeing the sutra. There's a little more to go, but I want to pause here for a moment. Does this spark anyone? Any comments or questions from anyone? Do you actively, Pujari, you can go ahead.
It's our precious Hamsa. That's what Baba was teaching a couple Monday nights ago.
Yeah.
It's
Which was even
our
more
practice.
fitting. I was about to teach this last Thursday, but then we were sick. And I was like, he's teaching the thing we're doing Thursday. How does he do this? But yeah. So is this a part of your practice for Hamsa? Do you focus on the pause?
Oh, I just love it. It's just my favorite when I'm not, yeah, I can calm myself down enough. It's the best. And Nityananda in Song of the Self, he goes to great length about it as well,
I didn't know that. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, that's my memory of it anyway.
Oh, cool. Yeah, since reading this and getting the practice from Babaji, which is always the spark that ignites it, the pause has become very powerful, actually, in my own practice. But I wanted to see where it's landing for you all. Are there any ways that you pause during your day? Are there any times that, do you take time to pause? Yeah, not Johnny. and I'm not on spotlight. Sorry about that. I forgot.
I just got a big smile when reading it. I think one of my favorite things actually in practicing is transitions, and transitions in dance was described to me like when I very first started learning about transitions. It's like two doorknobs, and at one point you have to let go of the doorknob in order to like latch on to this other doorknob. But in order to let go, there's this space of like fear and all the things like wondering and so, but I love it. It's a very artistic way of looking at transitions through your day. I mean, it's always in transition from something happened, you get in your car and you go to somewhere else. And that's then where your mind starts going. And having mantra and all of that is so helpful. But for me, the best is when it's not really three anymore, that it's just kind of one, and it kind of like, I don't know, I'm kind of doing this like infinity symbol, but that it's so seamless, and so that there's so many multiple points along this line between two and with a third in the middle. So.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. You bring up a good point. Sometimes the transition it feels fearful. You feel like you're going to lose something. You have to let go of something, and you don't have the next thing in sight. And then other times it could be very mundane. The space of a transition could just be like driving, and your mind just wanders because you're not putting it on anything. And so that this middle space has a whole range of experience. The way that we relate to that space in between, when our mind can latch on to an experience. And I think that'd be a great thing to explore this week. How are you approaching, figuratively, all of us, the transitional spaces of your day, the physical ones, as they say in the sutra, or even the more, the transitional spaces between thoughts. Is that real? Have you experienced that kind of space in your day, like actually seeing a thought end and not going into the next one so fast? Yeah, I think this is sort of a good focal point for us. Yeah, Anju.
Something about the word gap struck me differently than when we've looked at this kind of idea of transitions before, and I'm not sure why. And it's kind of more of a mundane kind of sensation, I guess, but it just was sort of this like awareness that the richness of being a human being really comes from the gap. It's the stuff that happens between that really gives us like the richness and the meaning of being.
Thank you for sharing that. That is definitely the feeling I have in the space between the breath. It really establishes this richness. Is just such a perfect word. I'm so glad you brought that into the discussion. It establishes like a baseline of richness, that as you inhale or exhale after that point, after that still point, it remains rich. Yeah, and if we rush through those transitional spaces, how everything feels so superfluous. No matter what the next thing is, we're just on to the next thing. How that space between defines the experience of the thing we're going towards. So thanks, Anju. That was really helpful. Yogita.
I have been doing the Hamsa a lot and trying to focus on the space. And one thing I've experienced is a turnaround. It's like the breath goes in and it turns around and goes out. And as it does that, it goes deeper into the chakras. And it's kind of like digging up stuff and throwing it out and going deeper. That's just what I've been experiencing.
Nice. That turnaround reminds me of, wasn't it Radharani's spiral diagram? Yeah, how, we feel like we're just always, yeah, okay, Bob says thumbs up. How it just keeps going deeper. Even it appears like it's going up and down like a spiral would, but if you follow that spiral, it's actually going deeper each time. So it's, well, hopefully we can experience that for ourselves when we're sitting later. And that moment between the breaths is where you can feel that it is going somewhere. It's going deeper. You can actually feel the gravity of it. Yeah, I think it's going to be a very fruitful week or two actually till we meet again. This has just been so valuable. Should we go on to another quote, or is there any last comments on this one? Oh, okay, Kara.
I actually was taken aback by the word triple, and I work with numbers, and I know that 3 is a pretty significant number. And I also immediately thought about the symbolism of the third eye. And that's just kind of what I was getting from the quote, was opening up the third eye.
Yes, a practical way that I sort of have worked with that, that feels in alignment with what I've been taught, is that it's like what you see with your eyes is duality, but what you see with your third eye is a feeling of unity within that duality. Like you can see the room that you're in, but when you soften your gaze a little bit, almost like the Shambhavi Mudra, and you sort of start to see with a little bit of detachment, it allows you to feel that ability to interact with your world, not so one-on-one with the senses, but a little bit removed. So I think the third eye is a great way, to approach this space. Really, it's a space of awareness that we can see from, learn to see from. Thanks, Kara. Anyone else before we move on? Sure, Pujari.
I just had a question about this Vachanda Tantra. I don't think I've ever heard of it before.
Hmm.
Where did it come from? And it's very interesting the way it's written.
Yeah, to my understanding, it's a text that precedes the sutras by at least 1,000 to 2,000 years. I actually feel like I just encountered it for the first time as I was reading through Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, and he mentions a couple of them. But it's oddly challenging to pinpoint some of these texts to get a good chronology. In fact, if anybody out there wants to put a little chronology together, timeline for us all, because they continually reference these texts. The Malini Vijaya Tantra comes up a ton. I just read in Zen Flesh and Bones like that, where that one comes in. So maybe we can start to put together a little timeline for each other. And if anybody's really into that, take the lead.
Did you write this paragraph up?
This is from the Shiva Sutras. So the top part here is quoted directly in the sutras, and then this is Lakshmanju's commentary based on Shea Maharaja's original commentary. So none of this is me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I put the slide together. Yeah. So let's look at one more part of the quote, because I think it's pretty well. It's powerful to say the least. Let's see what y'all think of this before we meditate. Um, Anonymous, how's it going? Would you like to read this one for us? And I can make it bigger if it's hard to read.
Okay.
Okay.
As a yogi becomes one with Svachananda, with Bhaivaranatha, then differentiated perceptions do not exist. In another verse in the same tantra, we are told, the yogi becomes so great they terrify Brahma, Vishnu, and Indra, the Siddhas, Daityas, and those who rule the great deities, Garuda, etc. They cause them to be fearful, or if they are satisfied with them, they drive fear away from them. They are the bestower of boons and curses. Even the Lord of death cannot stand before them. By the power of their will, they can level great mountains.
Hmm. It's always an interesting moment when in the Gita, this comes up, when they talk about this power inside of us is just unfathomable, and that when they say like you could terrify Brahma or Vishnu with this power, you're just like, what do you mean? Like, that's just so far beyond my comprehension. But it comes up a lot in the Ramayana. There are gurus, there are, great practitioners that rise to these unprecedented levels of awareness. And there's really no limit just because they have a human form. I'm not saying I understand it, but I am saying it's referenced in a lot of texts of the yogic tradition, including the ones that we chant every day. For my interpretation, I don't think we're trying to level literal mountains. I think we're trying to level mountains of karma. I don't think we're trying to scare a deity. I don't think any of us, that doesn't really, it's just not where we're at. But we should know that our capacity as yogis is far beyond our comprehension, that we should have no limits to what we think is possible through our practice. And that's where this came to me. It might come to you differently. But Swami Rajananda is pretty clear that, this is two things. One, there's a strength that we are building as yogis, that there is a strength that accumulates that allows us to consume more and more of our karma. And two, that the power we're tapping into is, as he described it, the most powerful force in the universe. And I don't think he meant that metaphorically. I really don't. I think it was very literal. And so here's just an example of what's possible in this space between our breaths, between our thoughts, this space of stillness, this space of awareness. Any questions or comments? Sure, Bob.
Yeah, I have been aware of several times, maybe in the last few years, where I'm in meditation and something starts to open up, and it literally is terrifying. And I don't know why. I don't, it's not an image I see. It's not a something I perceive. It's just something opens up and there's just the briefest instant of terror. And then it's gone. And then I'm wondering, what was that? It's like seeing the blue pearl. It's there and then it's gone and has no rhyme or reason as far as I can tell. But it's the same thing with these moments of terror. And but I have learned, or I've trained myself to not let them stop me. In fact, I'm kind of looking forward to the next moment of terror to see how well I handle it. I'll let you know. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I wish you the best on that journey. But I think what you bring up it's just it's that hero's journey. It's the spiritual warrior. It's that this is real. That we really are excavating parts of ourself. This isn't a superficial practice. As Babaji says, he said recently, one of the reasons the ashrams are so valuable is because they allow people to come to a place to do a real and powerful practice in a safe, supportive environment. That we really are, as a sangha, creating that space for each other to do real excavating, not just smooth the surface. Thanks. So we're going to pause there. Time is tricky. We're going to pause there. And again, we've got this all laid out in this week's Pocket Sutra. This quote plus another one. I have a quote from Babaji that talks about this over here too. And we'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss that. But let's meditate right now and really work with this space between our breaths, because I think it's such a fruitful space of our awareness. Feel free to adjust your seat, of course. But I want to note something in this last verse. When you are aware of the three centers, it says you are carried to God consciousness. Carried there. So I want you to imagine right now that you're sitting up and you're sitting still. But as Babaji describes it, rock forward and rock back a little until you find that moment of balance where you should feel a little bit lighter, almost as if through this stillness you were being held or carried. That you aren't doing all the work of stillness. You're doing your part. But that stillness, real stillness, is a part of your true nature. This lightness. And similar with our breath flow, we start by inhaling and exhaling smoothly and evenly. And this takes a physical effort. Try to make the effort very minimal, of course, but it's there. Between the breaths, we can feel something lighter than our effort. You don't have to hold on to it as we've been taught many times. You let it come and you observe it. can swallow and then allow the next breath to be drawn effortlessly towards the heart with your inhale. And then with your exhale, assimilate it. The inhale draws in, and as you exhale, it doesn't just flow back out. That energy shines. These are two valuable aspects of our practice, the way we use our inhale and our exhale. And there's a moment in between each breath that can inform this work. You can feel that pause between each aspect of your breath. It will make your work within the breath more effective. The thoughts arise, but they can't match the dissolving power of that pause between the breath. It is the great leveler of thoughts, of distractions. Feel how the pause pinpoints your awareness in the heart. It creates a distilled drishti, In the Vijnana Bhairava, we're instructed to feel for the two pauses, the pause at the base and the pause at the crown. And you can allow your awareness as you inhale to draw down along the front of the body to that pause at the navel. And as you exhale, you can allow the awareness to wrap and draw up the spine to the pause at the crown. We don't have to push or pull. The pause does all the work. Feel that space of the pause waiting for you throughout the whole inhale, that pause waiting in the navel. And then feel the energy drawing up the spine effortlessly, buoyantly to its destination, to its home, in that pause, the crown. By the power of their practice, this yogi can level great mountains. As your energy flows down the front to the navel with that effortless effort of the inhale, and then wraps around the base, up the spine to the crown with your effortless, buoyant exhale. You are leveling mountains of karma like water. You're flowing through them, over them endlessly, wearing them away. By just being in your flow, by just putting your vital force into this pathway. We don't have to do any battle, but we do have to focus our energy. Letting the eyes slowly open. And just taking stock of, honestly, the power that you may feel inside. The vitality might be a better word for it, as it's really just for your growth, you know. And the relationship that those pauses had to your experience. So with that, we'll conclude. I did have one little tidbit to add. We've been printing ours on colorful paper. our Pocket Sutra because it's just, well, we had this idea. It's sort of fun to when you're done with them, what do you do? What do you do with them when you're done? Are you gonna stitch them all together and make a big book? You know, maybe that's a pretty cool idea. Or you could, there you go. Or you could unfold it, fold one little part up here, do that little triangle thing that they do. And then here, I'll just put it on here. And then this triangle, and then you go in and then around and then back and a swan. You could make it into a swan, a crane. And as we know, in the Japanese tradition, you fold 1,000 paper cranes in order to attain something. On a lot of times it's done to help someone's health, but it's actually done in any discipline to attain, because we all know it takes time. Imagine if you had 1,000 of these swans strung up, and that represented 1,000 sutras that you worked on, more or less, or portions. I don't know. I did the math. If we did one a week, that would take 20 years. So I'm going to shoot for 100. I'm going to go for 100. But anyway, so that was just an idea. If you wanted to start printing it on colorful paper, what you could do with it afterwards. That was the surprise yogi said. I hope it lived up to the expectations. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention. Namaste.
Now you're going to have a craft lesson on how to make them.
True. I was going to do a video and I realized there are so many great YouTube videos better than what I would do. So just type it in, how to fold a crane.
Jai Jai Shri Ram Sitaram, Jai Jai Shri Ram Sitaram. Jai Jai Shri Ram Sitaram, Jai Jai Shri Ram Sitaram.